Good morning, everyone. This is George Canis. I'm an attorney in Las Vegas, Nevada for the past 30 years. And welcome to our webinar this morning about the 5 things to do in the first 24 hours after you're involved in a motor vehicle crash. Thank you for joining us this morning. I'm here with you from my home office, which is a desktop in the middle of my kitchen at home. And thanks for joining us. So let's talk about the 5 things that you should always do within 24 hours of ever being involved in a motor vehicle crash. Number 1, and to me, maybe one of the most important things, is call the police. This is incredibly important part of things to do once you're involved in a crash with another vehicle. This should be something that you do the second after the impact from the vehicles occur. And the reason for this is that most drivers that cause motor vehicle wrecks try to talk you out of calling the police for obvious reasons. One, they think that they can give you cash to take care of your property damage, and that's going to make everything fine and make you go away. And 2, they're going to try to get out of it later. I can tell you of many cases we've handled over the years where a smooth talking car driver was able to talk our client out of calling the police, and then later went back to their insurance company to somehow blame our client for it happening. Without a policeman at the scene preparing a traffic crash report, which is what they're called, and clearly defining the investigation the policeman did, his speaking to both vehicle operators and him inspecting the property damage to each vehicle and the roadways. That other driver, if you don't have that police report, is going to go back to his or her insurance company and let you know how you caused the collision to occur, which then creates a he said versus she said type scenario, as I like to call them, and oftentimes creates severe problems as to who's at fault for these types of incidents. So it's very important to call the police as soon as this incident happens, and to call them before you even get out of your car and inspect your car or speak to the other driver. For a while in Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department had a policy where they would tell drivers that they were no longer reporting to motor vehicle crash scenes unless there was what they called serious injuries involved. That policy only lasted for a few months, but the problem with it is that some people still feel or still think that policy is in effect and that the police will not come out to the accident scene if there are not quote unquote serious injuries involved. Well, that's not the policy, and so you should definitely call 911 as soon as you're involved in a wreck like this. We've also seen certain situations where the 911 operator starts arguing or challenging or questions whether or not police need to be sent to the scene of a motor vehicle wreck. I always tell clients, politely ask the 911 operator to send police to the scene, and don't let yourself get talked out of not having the police come to the scene of one of these wrecks. Without a police report, you have no official version of what occurred, and it turns into what one person said against what another person said. The police can figure that out. They can sort through each party's story and come up with what they believe is a unbiased, objective report about what exactly happened. This will make the entire processing of your personal injury claim a lot more defined, a lot easier, and it will take away the ability of the other driver to try to create issues after the fact. So the number 1 step, call the police. Don't get talked out of it. Don't let a 911 operator talk you out of it, and definitely don't let the other driver talk you out of calling the police. It could not be more important. The second step, and I think an equally important step that you have to do once you're involved in a motor vehicle wreck is to pull out that cell phone and use it. I would say 99% of our clients have cell phones. If you know anyone that doesn't have a cell phone, you need to tell them to go get one and get one that has a camera in it, because your cell phone camera is the second most important thing in investigating a motor vehicle wreck. And the second most important thing, that'd be after having the police come. Using your cell phone at the scene of the collision allows you to document a lot of things clearly. It allows you to document the property damage involved. It allows you to document what the roadway was like. It allows you to document what the traffic was like at the scene. If it's at all possible, try to leave the vehicles in the position they were when the impact happened. Now, obviously, if you're on the I-15 at 8 in the morning near the Sahara Avenue exit, that may be difficult to do with the traffic. And you don't want to cause yourself additional harm by having other vehicles crash into you because you're keeping your vehicle in the middle of the roadway. But for the most part, unless it's a situation like that, you're able to allow the vehicles to stay in the position they were when the wreck happened and take photos of it. Now, I would seriously let you know that taking selfies of yourself with the car or with the other driver, not entirely recommended. This picture, this slide rather, would be a good representation of what not to do in a wreck, is to take a selfie with the other driver involved. It's not a good look. But it is important, though, to use your cell phone, document how the vehicles were positioned at the time of the wreck, take photographs of what the property damage looked like. I've also noticed recently, and I encourage this, is clients taking video of all of these things, taking video of the property damage, taking a video of the position of the vehicles, and taking a video of what the traffic looked like at the time. Oftentimes, if you are able to show video of a lot of traffic that's occurring right when this motor vehicle collision occurred, you're able to prove by that short video the amount of traffic that was on the roadway and how it was important that all drivers keep a safe distance from each other and drive at a speed that's reasonable for what those traffic conditions were. Because if that driver had kept a safe distance and had been driving at a speed that was safe for the traffic conditions, typically motor vehicle collisions do not happen. So taking videos is very important if you're able to and if your phone allows you to. Photographs and video, cell phone, very important. One of the best situations I've seen was a client that was involved in a wreck. The other driver was obviously intoxicated, and the other driver started videoing the behavior of the other driver. And when the police got there, videoed that driver undergoing the field sobriety test and showing the other driver falling to the ground when the officer just asked to do the simple heel-to-toe maneuver. So again, cell phones, use them. Very important. They document everything. The old adage that a picture is worth 1,000 words is never more applicable to your cell phone when you use it right after a motor vehicle collision takes place. And no selfies. No selfies. Okay. The next step that's very important regarding what you should do right after you're in a wreck. And this is a question I get asked a lot. And actually, it's a question that you really need to think about before you act on it. And that is, do you need an ambulance to come get you and take you to an emergency room? This is something that you need to seriously consider whether or not you're going to do it or not. And the reason I say that is because it's very important that if you're experiencing certain types of problems at the scene of the collision, it's something you should request. But on the other hand, if you're not experiencing certain types of problems, it's a request perhaps that you should think about not making. So what are the types of problems that you could be experiencing at the scene of a motor vehicle collision that would warrant you requesting to be evaluated by paramedics at the scene and perhaps be transferred to a local emergency room? Well, let me give you some examples. If you experience loss of consciousness because of a wreck, because you hit your head somewhere in the interior of your vehicle and experienced loss of consciousness because of this wreck, I strongly recommend that you definitely want to let the police officer know about that and to have them call for paramedics to evaluate you at the scene and then determine whether or not you need to go in an ambulance. The reason for this is if you strike your head, that could cause a lot of internal issues for you. It could cause perhaps traumatic type brain injury that you're experiencing. You could have a concussion, and it could just be very unsafe for you to get back in a vehicle and drive, excuse me, after this type of incident occurs. So if this is something that you're experiencing, excuse me, right after an incident occurs, it's very important that you let the police know this and that you ask that they send paramedics out to the scene to evaluate you. Now, what happens if your pain is severe? In other words, so severe it's causing problems with you functioning. It's causing you problems with you just being able to walk around. It's causing problems with your focus. If your pain is that severe at the scene of a motor vehicle collision, again, you should let the police know this and ask that they order an ambulance to come out and have the paramedics take a look at you. Another good example is if you're experiencing pain that's radiating into your arms or into your legs and causing you numbness in your arms or legs, that could be the sign of a very bad spine type injury. Again, something like that would warrant you calling for an ambulance to have paramedics check you out and see whether or not you need a transport to a local emergency room. So these are just some examples, and they're certainly not all inclusive of the bunch of reasons that you would think about having the police order an ambulance for you to come to the scene. If you're noticing these symptoms and it's taking a while for the police to come to the scene of your motor vehicle wreck, there's nothing outrageous about you calling 911 to request that they send you an ambulance so the paramedics can evaluate you and see whether you need to be transported to a hospital. Our police are very busy with traffic accident wrecks in town. I've taken depositions of police officers who over their career here in Las Vegas have investigated over 10,000 vehicle wrecks. So they investigate many of these per day. And that's between Metro, Nevada Highway Patrol, City of Henderson, City of North Las Vegas, Boulder City Police. They're all very busy investigating these types of incidents. And sometimes they can't get there within 5 or 10 minutes. So in those situations, if you are experiencing any of these types of problems, there's nothing wrong with you calling 911 and requesting that they send over an ambulance to have you checked out. That's entirely reasonable. Now, what happens if you're in a vehicle wreck and at that moment, your pain is not that severe, you didn't have loss of consciousness, you don't have any other types of problems except that you're feeling it, but it's not of a severe nature. That's a judgment call that's left up to you whether or not to call for an ambulance for possible transport to the emergency room. But I definitely tell you that those are all potentially serious problems and that you should have them checked out immediately. I oftentimes, I'm also asked, well, what happens with the other driver? How do I deal with the other driver at the scene of this wreck, especially before police get there? I tell clients, you better be careful. You need to be cautious what you tell the driver because the most innocent statement can be twisted against you. I think it's fair to ask the other driver if they're okay, if they need any help, and I would hope that the other driver extends the same courtesy to you. But it's very important to be careful what you say to the other driver at the scene. It is important to get the driver's information, obviously. The police will oftentimes do this for you, but there's nothing outrageous about asking the other driver for their identification, such as their driver's license and their registration. So those are all appropriate requests. There's nothing outrageous about it, and that's something you should feel free to ask the other driver about. In fact, if the other driver refuses to produce those, that should create some suspicions on your part as to why they would not be willing to provide you with that information. So that would be kind of what the process is on how you should consider whether or not you should get emergency room care directly from the motor vehicle collision scene. If you are experiencing problems at the scene of the collision and you're feeling that it doesn't warrant an ambulance to an emergency room, you should definitely then, as soon as you can after this incident, at least go to a local urgent care. There's many urgent care chains in the Las Vegas Valley, all across the city of Las Vegas and Henderson, North Las Vegas and Summerlin and Green Valley, Boulder City. There's a lot of different urgent cares that you're able to go into and get checked out real quickly just to make sure there's nothing serious going on before you then start going and treating with another doctor. So that would be the next step as far as what you should do, and those are the types of things you should speak about. So the next issue is, the next step is going to be, this is a great slide, by the way. The next step is who to avoid after you're involved in a motor vehicle wreck. The person you need to avoid the most is an insurance adjuster. And I could tell you hundreds of stories over the years that clients have told me of what happens to them when they speak to an insurance adjuster right after a wreck before ever contacting an attorney. And I can tell you, those stories always end up in disaster. Let me give you an example. One of my favorite examples is the adjuster who later that night, after a client of mine is involved in a wreck and the client is coming to see me the next day, the adjuster calls the client and says, "Ms. Smith, this is Adjuster Jones, and I'm calling to see how you're doing today." And she says, "Well, I'm fine, thank you, but I'm feeling some problems." The client hires me the next day. I send out our letter of representation to the insurance company. Adjuster Jones calls me and says, "I spoke with your client the night of the wreck that she was in, and she told me she was doing fine and wasn't injured at all, and we're denying any payment for any medical expenses on this." I called the client and asked her what happened during this call. She explains to me what happens. This is a perfect example of how insurance adjusters are willing to twist what your clients say and use it against you. This adjuster later was a witness, named as a witness against our client, and continued with that storyline in trying to defeat the client's case. So that's a perfect example of why you shouldn't talk to an insurance adjuster right after this case, right after you're involved in a motor vehicle wreck. No good will come of it. You have to realize that insurance adjusters are highly trained individuals. They go through multiple seminars. They have 8-inch thick binders on how they're supposed to deal with people who are involved in motor vehicle wrecks. They're trained, they're specialized, and they're going to take advantage of you. So it's very important to keep away from adjusters and not let them get involved in any fact gathering directly from you. This is something that you need to let the attorney handle for you. Dealing with adjusters is going to cause nothing but problems. And so that's something that's very important. I know that there was one insurance company in town, because an attorney that used to work for me worked for them before he went to law school, and his job was every day he was given a list of people that were involved in motor vehicle wrecks with their insureds. And this adjuster's job was to go to their home within 24 hours of the incident occurring and try to settle their case with a checkbook with them for $1,000 or less. This person told me he received a bonus for every case he was able to settle for $500 or less within 24 hours of the motor vehicle wreck occurring. It used to be that these types of forced kind of settlements were enforceable, but fortunately we've had statutes that have been recently passed in Nevada that allow us to overturn a lot of these quick settlements that occur right after the incident happens. But a lot of people don't know that. And so the scenario or the situation that they're left with is they're involved in a wreck. 8 hours after the wreck happens, Jim the adjuster from XYZ insurance company is at his front door and says, "We hear you were involved in a wreck with our insured. We really are sorry about it, and we'd like to take care of you for it right now. And here's a check for $500. Well, if you're okay and not feeling anything 8 hours after the motor vehicle wreck occurs, some people will take that $500 check. They'll have you sign a release. But then what happens? The next morning, you wake up and you have severe neck or low back pain. You have bad headaches. You're unable to go to work that day, and you've settled your case for $500. And this is why you have to be aware and have to not allow something like this to happen to you. So insurance adjusters, after a motor vehicle wreck occurs, avoid them. There's no reason for you to speak to them. What's one of the main reasons you should hire an attorney on a motor vehicle wreck case is to allow something like that to happen. So the fifth and final step, within 24 hours of you being involved in a motor vehicle crash, lawyer up. It's very, very important that you get representation, that you hire somebody to protect you for what you were just involved in. You have clear and specific rights once you're a victim of a motor vehicle wreck. And the main way that you make sure that your rights, and you have many rights, are protected is to hire an attorney as soon as you can afterwards. Do you hire an attorney before you call the police? No, I would tell you to call the police first. Should you call an attorney before you start taking photos with your cell phone or videos at the scene? No, do that first. Use your cell phone first. But after all of that portion of everything is handled and all these other steps are handled, the next thing you need to do is hire an attorney. And so the question that's always asked is, well, what kind of an attorney should you hire for a case like this? Excuse me. You should always hire an attorney that specializes in personal injury cases. Be careful with attorneys that have 10 specialty areas, and personal injury law is number 7 of the specialty areas. There are many attorneys in Las Vegas that specialize solely in personal injury law, and those are the attorneys that you should look for. And there's many, and there's a lot of excellent ones in Las Vegas, and it's very important that you do hire an attorney that specializes in nothing but personal injury. So once you figure out that you are able to know an attorney that does nothing but personal injury law, how do you know if he's the right fit for you? Well, being a personal injury lawyer involves a lot of things. And one of them is, what kind of experience does the attorney have? Do you hire an attorney that has a massive advertising budget, but rarely ever goes to court, has no trial experience? How does an insurance company look at an attorney like that? How do they treat an attorney like that? I would tell you that insurance companies treat attorneys that have very little trial experience, very little experience over the years in handling these types of cases. They treat those attorneys very differently from attorneys that have lengthy background time-wise in handling injury cases here in Las Vegas Valley, and also will treat attorneys very differently that have had a lot of personal injury trial experience. These are very important factors that you need to consider when you figure out what attorney you're going to hire for your personal injury case. And these are legitimate questions asked the attorney. How many years have you handled any personal injury cases? How many personal injury trials have you had during your career? How long have you practiced in Las Vegas? An attorney that practices 35 years in somewhere else, say Iowa, Nebraska, somewhere else, that level of experience doesn't necessarily translate to an attorney that has practiced here in Nevada for decades. So ask the questions of the attorney. There's nothing wrong with that. I have potential clients ask me these questions all the time. And that's a client that asks those questions that in my mind, I know that they know what they're doing and that they're going to make the right choice in hiring the right attorney for themselves on these types of cases. A good personal injury attorney will meet with you and then will assist you in getting additional medical care. Now, I always tell clients to be careful about going to see their primary care doctor for injuries from an auto wreck. And why is that? Well, the attorney that you see for a sore throat isn't necessarily set up to make sure that you are able to get good, solid treatment for a spine injury or closed head injury. These types of doctors are very different that are able to provide care for those types of injuries as opposed to your general practice internist who you go see for colds and bronchitis type problems and things like that. So it's very important that when you see the attorney that you speak with the attorney and talk to them about the type of care that you need. I mean, that's one of the reasons you go to a personal injury attorney. So you get assistance with not only protecting your rights, but making sure that you go see a doctor that's going to be able to help you cure the types of problems that you're experiencing, whether it be your neck pain or lower back pain, headaches, and the like. And those are the types of things that people typically experience after a motor vehicle wreck. So that attorney was going to assist you and help you with those types of things. That attorney will guide you through our legal system and help you know what to expect and be realistic with you. And that's always very important. Always beware of attorneys that want to promise you the moon on your first visit, because that's not realistic. You want somebody that's going to be able to be reasonable with you, protect your rights, and make sure that you get the medical care and treatment that you need. So I really appreciated this morning the opportunity to speak with everyone and to give you my 5 steps on what you should do in the first 24 hours after being involved in a motor vehicle wreck. We tried to cover all of these steps for you as thoroughly as we were able to this morning. And again, we thank everyone for joining us this morning. And if my office can ever be of assistance to you, we've been located in downtown Las Vegas since 1992, and we're happy to help. We're happy to help you out. So again, have a great day. Thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you again soon. Take care.